Hello, and a very good afternoon to our audience here, and welcome to this poetic event, the launch of this incredible book, The Glass Tree. And a warm welcome to those who watch us online. Before we start, I will do a short propaganda announcement, as we do often. The bar is open, the emergency exit is that side, the toilets are in this corner and there, and the book, The Glass Tree, is available for sale. And if you need to ask any questions or information, you can find my colleague around with their t-shirt, Litteraturhuset I Trondheim. We are delighted to start this semester with such events to celebrate poetry, art, diversity, and creativity. The Glass Tree is a unique collection of poems for all ages and contain amazing artwork by the children. It is important to mention that the artworks are done by the children, not only for the children, but by the children, in a form that young children are included and involved to express their feeling, understanding, and interpretation of poetry. The poems address many aspects of life, including nature, feelings, emotion, and relationships. With this uniquely approach, this publication can be used as a source of inspiration for similar projects because it mirrors the core idea of inclusion and make art, poetry, and culture accessible to people regardless of their age. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest, the author of this beautiful book, Martha Skogen, a lifelong poet, artist, designer, and former associate professor of design. Martha has great respect for the innate creativity that everyone is born with, including young children. She enjoys workshops with creators of all ages interested in the intersection between literature and the arts. Martha has collaborated with the House of Literature in Trondheim through our Literature for Inclusion initiative in several events and occasions, such as the International Day of Mother Language. In this event, Martha will make a short presentation about her poetry work and activity with children. After her presentation, we will have a conversation regarding the book and her artistic work with the children. And at the end, there, of course, will be room for Q&A. Dear Martha, the mic and the screen is yours.
Thank you so much. What a privilege and a beautiful thing to be here in Litteraturhuset, back where this actually started. And I want to share with you, thank you to those who are watching online, internationally and locally in Norway. So thank you everybody for coming. This means so much to me. This is quite a big moment. Maybe I've been waiting for this moment my entire life, actually. So my heart and soul is in this book, and before we get to it, I really want to just give you some background, not so much on the actual workshop that we did ourselves, but I want to give you some context about where I am and what I think about children's art in the literature landscape. It's quite interesting. So we'll just do a little presentation here. And first, before we start, I would actually really like to know, and this is not a hypothetical question, it's a real one, has anybody seen a book that's been published that uses children's art as a form of the content, not as something that was discussed or described or analyzed? Does anyone know of anything? The reason I ask is because I have done a lot of research. I've dug quite deeply into this, and I have found nothing. So with that in mind, and all the books that exist in the world and everywhere, I would like to just keep that in the back of your head as we go through this. So that was my question. As adults, we often teach art to children. We understand this inherently. We remember our art teachers from grade school. They're some of my favorite professors, of course. Even Mark Rothko, one of my favorite artists, was teaching art to kindergartners and teaching art to children. We also study and debate and write and analyze and dissect and talk about children's art. So these are just some examples of what I'm finding as I go through this concept. And when we talk about children's art, that's something very, very different. You were referring to that, yes.
Exactly.
We also draw art for children. Here are some examples of my all-time favorite artists who are drawing for children. Paul Rand, Dr. Seuss, of course, Eric Carle. We also take courses on how to draw for children. We deeply understand they're a unique population, and we want to present our work to them in the way that matches their use. So drawing for children is a completely different experience also. I have taken a number of these courses in how to draw for children. Again, not the same. My question then, I ask a lot of questions, by the way, is where is their art? Where are children represented in the literary and the artistic community? Besides here, of course. Everyone has a gallery at home, and sometimes it's 5 or 6 layers deep. Other than that, adults can also tend to dismiss art, unfortunately. I wanted to play this video, but it's not working at this moment. This is a little girl who runs in and chastises her mother for having thrown away her artwork. And she is not pleased, and it's a slightly heartbreaking film. If you've seen it, if you haven't, it's worth a watch. However, there are exceptions. There are places and organizations that do respect and present art created by children. Of course, teachers and organizations, libraries, some galleries. This is just, again, a sampling. There are some unique and special times that children's art is represented here in Norway in the International Museum of Children's Art. An entire museum dedicated only to children's arts. Well, you can see where I like to go sometimes, and it's a huge house, and it's filled. Even the ceiling is filled with children's art. So I've spoken with the manager there a number of times. The most challenging thing she has to do is to say no and eliminate artwork. Also, Olavsfest, an annual festival here in the summer, also engages children in very beautiful and authentic ways. This was an example. I worked with the team in putting the children's art in Nidarosdomen, in the Nidaros Cathedral. Also, it can be found on architecture in some schools in Norway. That's quite unique and validating and a good idea, in my opinion. What I want to know is, where is the artwork created with children? Here's an example. People know Pink and her daughter Willow Sage sang a song. It's quite famous. Also in Nidarosdomen, there was an artist, a glazier, who asked children to draw whatever they wished, and she recreated that in glass. That's now on display near Nidarosdomen. This is co-creation. This is collaboration. This is the type of thing that I deeply admire and encourage, enjoy, and, well, you'll see. Here's some other examples. And these are co-creating with children who are the top one is a toddler. The mother takes the drawings and does magic with them. And then the bottom one is a father who takes his two sons' drawings and, well, you get the idea. I could fill a whole screen of these examples. Here's a very beautiful idea. The local team from Trondheim, mother and daughter, that made cards that have statements of empowerment on them and help children feel good. It's a stack of cards, and the child takes one out, looks in the mirror, and expresses the saying. The child did all of the drawings. It's a really beautiful project. So with all of these examples, this is a group of children that did the workshop after I finished the book. With all of these incredible examples, what I also really want to know is, why do we not see this in book form? Until now. So somebody's got to do it first, right? Here we are with the glass tree. It took some years, and we finally have a book in existence that encourages and embraces children's art. I want to give you an example of what we're talking about, so before we get to the book itself. The poem, these were examples that were done by children after the book was finished. And the poem that I would read to you, I will express to you, and that the children drew, is this. As you lay waiting under my glass tree, did you know peace? So what are the images that come up in your mind? There are images. There is a lot going on, and what I have asked the children to do is to capture those images, let themselves respond to something in the poem, and then recreate it. It's really quite simple, actually. And so here are some of the examples. This is a child, age 7, from the United States. We did this online. Notice the tree in front gives it dimension. The child is asking, what is peace? Well, that's quite a question, isn't it? Another example is this one that takes on a humorous view. So there's a double entendre going on here. In Norwegian, the word for peace is fred, which he's interpreted to mean the name of a person, Fred. So we are seeing Fred under the tree. It's quite charming. And the last example is a child who wrote a poem back, and I'll read it for you. Glass trees can shatter, you know. Glass trees can shatter and break and fall, but the glass is always there, reflecting back to you. This is a 13-year-old child. We're in exchange here. This is a beautiful space that is created by this type of activity. So with that as an understanding of where we're going with our discussion, I also just want to let people know that to contact me and order the book or buy the book locally, it can be purchased here in Trondheim or contacting me at this address. I also want to deeply express my thanks and appreciation for Litteraturhus. Again, this is my home away from home. And to the family of Trondheim International School. This is what we did together. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for your
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you for your very interesting and remarkable presentation that making us aware that how important it is to appreciate the artwork by children. I wanted to ask you to start our conversation to tell us about your experience with poetry and what does it mean to be a lifelong poet?
This is such a wonderful question, and I find myself coming back to an idea, and I wonder if I'm unusual. I remember the first word that I learned how to spell, and it was the word "the." And do you remember the epiphany? I remember, I can step back into it as we speak. There was an epiphany of that combination of letters means something, and that can build something into something else that means something. So I remember that at a very, very young age. And I remember thinking there's not much that rhymes with the word "the." So already I was thinking poetically at a very, very young age. I also recall writing poetry in first grade. So for me, it really is a lifelong journey. And for some reason, I've always been very attracted to the more reduced, the minimalistic forms of poetry. So senryu, haiku, tanka, tanbauk. So these more structured and smaller poems that distill and create images that only one word is necessary. So poetry for me it's just always been there. And I'm finally also here embracing this to be able to say, yes, in fact, I'm a poet. I claim that title.
Oh, thank you. You're Trondheim's poet, and you have been working with art and poetry in Trondheim for many years.
Thank you.
And it gets back to a book. I'm interested to know. You have given us some detail, but I really want to know that what are your methods working with children and doing artistic activity and to create such an incredible publication?
So I learned by, I found that when I was teaching university students, if I came in stressed, the students were stressed. That's pretty normal to presume. My immediate response is that the best method I found was to do actually some minutes of mindfulness, to calm down, to let me center, to let the room understand that this is a safe space. What is also extremely important for me to communicate with people is that there is no wrong answer. There cannot be a wrong answer. Poetry is a genre in which you interpret, you respond and bring it into yourself. It's a very engaging type of activity. Some activities are passive, some types of reading or viewing, but this is, to read especially the more minimalistic poetry, you need to get into it. You have something that you are relating to. And so to encourage the children that there is absolutely no way they can misinterpret the poems was always really front and center. And that also gave them the space to create whatever they wanted. Yeah. And that the images that they were relating to, that's the gold. That's what I wanted to get in. It's almost like trying to get inside other people's heads. If you can't get there, you ask them to draw. So, and what I found is that the children had complete openness. They were, and still are, and adults as well. So, yes, some of the workshops do also include adults. We're talking about children for this project, but it's such a special experience to also watch people relax into their own creativity. And that's something I find very, very powerful and rewarding. is to watch people gain that feeling of empowerment, that they can create. You know, we often hear people say, oh, I can't draw, That doesn't happen. When people are encouraged to just let it go, let it be, and not feel that they're being judged, magic happens. And that's actually what I believe was going on here.
Indeed, it is a magic to do poetry with the children and art.
Yes.
I want to take you a bit more into detail to ask you to share some of your highlights of experience. You have read a couple of your poems that you have worked, maybe from the book, or share an art experience you have done through all this process to give us somehow a bit more image that how this magic is happening.
Well, I can describe the project that brought this about. So maybe a bit of history first, actually. As I was growing up, and poetry was the friend who never left my side, and I was going in and out of it. I came to the poetry nights here in this room, sat in that area of the room, and I was with someone very dear to me who I had not been here before. I had not seen this before. There were people getting called up to the microphone, and I thought, what is this all about? What is going on here? And so I was with my son, who, as I was writing my poems, being inspired, kind of poked me a little bit and said, Mom, raise your hand. Mommy, raise your hand. And I couldn't believe that I actually did. And I thought, oh, now I have to come up, and now all of a sudden I'm speaking the poetry, which also was quite exceptional, because getting it out of your space here into a shared space, also very different.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. So I think I remember that event when I was here. You
Really?
were reading, your poem. It was quite emotional.
Did I cry?
Yeah. It was an emotional poem. I remember that, but at the same time, for those, many of you know this Poetry Night Trondheim.
Yes.
But for those who don't, Poetry Night Trondheim is a community project founded by Olga Lehmann, and is run voluntarily for the last 5-6 years, and has been a platform for inclusion and diversity for poetry. And I think we had over 30 different languages that were presented in this platform, and published Trondheim's first multilingual poetry collection, Horem in Poetry We Belong.
Yeah.
So I think next month, 14 or 15, 16, I think 16th of September, we will have this culture night that Trondheim celebrate, and we will join with a poetry night. Olga will be here, so all those who are interested in poetry, welcome back. Yes, please continue. It's
really special also, again, just for your own journey, and to understand that the spoken word of poetry is a different thing altogether. So that happened here, and then what the feedback was, much to my surprise, that people said, when I would read a poem, I would look up and people would be smiling or laughing or sometimes emotional or just looking at me. And people said, Martha, you have to write a book. You have to write a book. And I thought, no, wait, what? What? Maybe. So the seed was planted, and it took some years to grow. And in fact, at the time when I started collecting my poems, so part of my method is also to use Post-it notes, because in fact they go everywhere. They're super friendly, and they in fact make little books, so you can rearrange the pages quite easily on the fly. So I always have Post-it notes with me, even now. And so I started making my tiny little prototypes, and then I thought, okay, what if I actually did that? What if I actually took that seriously and made a book? I started to think as a designer, okay, well, I better think, am I going to draw it myself, or am I going to use photography, or... Wait a second. We had just done a TED Talk together.
Yes, we did.
And we were performing, and I was thinking, okay, where's this going? Next to you. And So after that experience, I thought, well, obviously, I'm going to ask children to do this.
Look, for many years we have been working together, even in our TED Talk on a same day.
Crossing
Yes, in
paths.
Trondheim. Interesting.
So,
Yeah.
so just a tiny bit more. So then I approached the school where my son was attending, and I asked to could I just pitch it? Can I do this with you guys? Let's try it. Never done this before. Let's go with the 5th grade here, and let's just try it. And of course, I was getting those poems approved beforehand. Well, let's get back to you, they said. A couple of days later, they came back, and I thought, well, that was a quick response. And they said, well, would you like the whole school for the whole day?
Wow.
Yes, was my answer. So that became an event, and it was a 1-day workshop. And for each class, I started from 1st grade and moved upward. I had, of course, had the poems approved beforehand, gotten all the teachers on board and gotten involved and had a lot of really inspiring discussions with the school. Went to the workshop, started in the 1st grade in the morning, and just started with a mindfulness exercise, started by reading the poetry. Mm-hmm. It was about 10 to 12 poems per class, age appropriate, but also willing to challenge the children a bit, even at the very early ages. So I wasn't talking down. I was inviting the children into whatever aspect of poems, whatever they related to was what they did. So then I went through the entire school and ended up with over 300 drawings.
Wow.
So it was a lot of work, and one of my requirements for being in the book, immediately as the students started handing me their work, I thought, this is the work, this is the book, this is happening now. And they were so welcoming and so kind and so engaged and so inspiring.
Indeed.
Yeah. The one requirement that I had was that the name be on it and that I was able to identify the poem that had been drawn, because it's very important that the poems that were drawn were made for that specific poem. The children weren't just making the poetry and then I sort of stuck it together with other poems. No, that poem was that drawing. So that was really important to me. There was some logistics around that, but...
Yeah. Let me ask you a question in this, because it is very interesting that you write your poetry in English.
Yes.
And then you share it with the students from different language background.
Yes.
And then they interpret and make artwork out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting, because then, poetry from English language goes to children from different linguistic background. Yes. And to create art, and then you put it in this remarkable publication.
And may I just add that only one child that entire day asked me what a word meant. It didn't matter. They had a selection from which to choose, and they responded to what they felt was what they wanted to do.
True. This is how we call poetry without borders, or poetry is a universal language that everybody can relate their own story, experience, feeling, emotion.
Yes.
And I will ask you a sort of general question regarding poetry reading in Norway. Generally, poetry is not as popular as other genres of literature in Norway, I think, like reading fiction, non-fiction, novels. So what is your experience with children? Does it really different, or because to look at the publication, I think in Norway there are so many other publications than poetry, so it is not that popular.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I hope it's changing.
I hope.
I hope. We definitely want this to change. Many of the children that I asked, especially in the earlier classes, they had actually just done a project on poetry, writing their own. So that was very, very encouraging. And I think there's an approachability to it. Maybe it's not as it doesn't fill as many shelves on the bookshelves in the stores or in the libraries. But something's happening. especially with events and with celebrities around the world. Amanda Gorman bringing it really to the forefront, and definitely a lot of poetry is going on in a lot of places, and I like to think that that's changing here. So, and I feel personally that, again, bringing children into the mix and understanding that they have an incredibly rich and powerful way of interpreting the poems, and that we give them credit for that and we validate their interpretations. I think there's something going on there.
Very good.
Maybe it's time to get it started.
Sure, it's good. Do you want to read
Sure.
some poems and share some artworks and talk about them?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
So I flagged a lot. Of course, they're small, so we'll see what we do here. So I read the first one, "As you lay waiting under my glass tree, did you find peace?" This is actually the book that inspired the title of the book, the poem.
Yeah.
And it also is the frontispiece. What I also do in the back of the book is I talk about the artwork itself. I go through as a designer and respond to it in a gentle and soft feedback or kind critique, and just respond to my ideas of what the child did artistically. So there are many aspects to it. So let's read some more. Reasons to exist, diving between molecules, bring forth wonderment. It's not easy to see, but I can just explain that as the children were doing this artwork, I felt myself being changed. As an artist, as a poet, as a designer, the things they were handing to me were sometimes funny, sometimes mind-blowing, sometimes surprising. How difficult to embrace each quiet, twinkling moment, sheltering between our thoughts. So what do thoughts look like? What does a thought actually look like? Well, this child has an idea. From a design perspective, this is incredibly rich and important. These children are doing real artwork. Not all of the poems are illustrated. And it's also important to point that out, that the ones that were illustrated were that exact poem. But there were also plenty more I had in my little Post-it notes that I did not invite children to illustrate. I just wanted to write the poem. Also in allowing us to project our own images into it. Simple camouflage. Art is inevitable. Summon hurricanes. Inhale willingly all that we agreed upon. Energized patience. Sodden weights thrust upon us. They were never ours. Your lilting accent, brave readiness to be wrong, language of empaths. We catch them downhill, tender pearls of happiness, rolling, gaining speed. Sometimes using words to describe things feels like throwing rocks at flowers.
Wow.
I have a lot more.
Well, it is very interesting and inspiring to listen to your poetry as well as you perform it and read in a very beautiful way, because I believe writing poetry is an art, but reading poetry is an art itself. So some people write poetry and then they don't have the art to perform and read it, and you have both.
Thank you.
I want to ask one more question before we open for Q&A for our public, but I will also ask our audience here to think when you make questions that we could have a sort of dialogue, that what it means for you, inclusion, diversity, make culture, poetry accessible for all ages, so then we could have an interaction and dialogue. You have mentioned that you received more than 300 artwork by children, by school students that you did work with. All of them are in this book, or this, how long the process for this book was and how many projects you did? Because I remember last year you did a project with the House of Literature here with some audience, and it's not only for the children, but in that audience I remember that you had the family, the father and the mother with their kids sitting together in a table and doing artwork and illustrating your poems. So for this book, how long it took and how many projects, how many artworks, how many artists as young artists are involved in this publication?
So it's grades 1 through 9. And
1 to 9.
1 to 9. So yeah, in the international school here. And again, this workshop was just one day. So every child did their artwork in approximately 30 minutes. Sometimes a child stayed a little bit extra. Sometimes they asked to do another one. We allowed that. That was fine. I was excited by their excitement. And all in all, I've forgotten the number, 97 pieces of art in here?
97.
97. Wow. Again, the only requirement was that I needed the identification on it. Some of them were also obviously unfinished, and I was communicated that they were unfinished. So, but the book itself then took a couple of years.
Yes.
Yes. So, and then we had a pandemic. So then, of course, things got delayed after that. But we're finally here, and it's a shared project, and it really is it gives me so much joy to share this with you all and everyone who's listening and watching in. It's really a gift to be able to share this, because how much I can tell you that this is what children can do. It really actually has to be experienced, and try it, offer and go for it, and just do it yourselves and watch what happens. So, I would like this to grow.
Thank you so much, and we will open for a Q&A, but before that I would like to thank you and appreciate your collaboration with the House of Literature for these years, and have been fast supporter of our Literature for Inclusion initiative. Thank you so much for this event. It was a pleasure
I want to say
to launch this beautiful book to start this semester. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also want to express a deep thank you to John Davis, who is the author of the foreword. And he's an award-winning poet in the US who gave me a lot of inspiration and encouragement and help also in the process of writing it. That is not easy. As a debuting poet, yes, I wanted some external feedback. So thank you, John.
Thank you so much. Maybe I should make a comment or say it's sort of question of personal interest. If you hear that noise and the little baby was disturbing, it is my 1-year-old daughter. She is in the audience, and then
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
exactly.
So she was making noise, and I was here a bit nervous with hearing her. She could
No.
communicate, but
Yeah.
she's most of the time with me. So,
Yeah,
and it was,
it's lovely.
yes, we have on here questions.
Hello. Um, I was just making an observation, and then a thought came to my mind that the way his daughter now reacted, could that be interpreted in as a good or a bad critic? As an open thought.
Interesting, yes. Please.
I myself am calmed by a baby chattering. I love and enjoy that sound, and I just immediately think, what would she do with any of this? What exactly, right? So she's communicating. And how we can encourage babies that small. In fact, I go into that in my TED Talk, where there is a baby who is very, very young, who is responding artistically to things. Again, I don't think we give babies enough credit, especially when they get older. People are artistic from the beginning.
Autistic or autistic?
Artistic.
Okay, yeah, just
People
just
are artistic. The question, what happens is we stop believing that ourselves. We get convinced. We start judging ourselves. We change our impressions, our ideas, our openness. So before she's gotten that embedded into her system, what do her pictures look like? Yeah. Artistic.
Thank you. I'll just ask, during your, if I should call it a lecture now, I tried to make some pictures in my mind, creative pictures of what you were telling about and explaining, and trying to picture myself if I was younger than my age now, 36, if I was a child again, or if the two friends of mine sitting next to me, if they were children expressing their love to each other, how would they express it in pictures? And I tried to get a few pictures out of your picture collection, if I should call it that, and try putting those different pictures and with the different settings and colors and so on, and when with also the poems you used, and trying putting those together to make a picture out of it and what it would look like. And of course the pictures are inside here, so it's not that easy to explain them, but something similar to what you have in your book, I might say.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you for that.
Do we have any more question from our audience? Here is.
Yep.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much. It has been wonderful, and I really appreciate the fact that we tend to think, thanks to what you just said and showed us, we can reevaluate this idea that, you know, we tend to underestimate kids and how they work, and then we've seen very complex issues, actually very abstract ideas, and beautifully translated into the messages. So my question is more of a curiosity, and it's about the implication of this collaboration with the school. And I wonder what would be the pedagogical implications of using this as a technique, as a way of understanding what kids might be going through, because maybe they're not able to write an essay about it, but they can express it better by these means. So I'm just wondering about what the teachers, the different people teaching there thought about the method, this project that you brought forward as a method as well to continue in the classroom.
That's a really good question. And it's also, it brings up something in me. I don't want this to be taken, my work with the children is not an art therapy type of approach, because there is that whole genre with very systematic qualifications. And I am not an art therapist, and I don't want to pretend to be. What I'm doing is just finding a way to access children's artistry in a slightly different way. And coming in also from the outside, not being a teacher, maybe has a little bit more sort of excitement to it, because I'm not there every day. So I think that's a really, really good question, and I honestly don't know the pedagogical effect of this on the children, or on me, or on the teachers. Certainly during the workshop itself, there were many of the teachers who also, we were sharing looks and talked afterwards about how wonderful it had been, and how we all were just kind of, surprised and really engaged. And that the children were also so welcoming and engaged. Children always had the option to leave. At any point, the child could walk out. So, but they didn't. And that was really nice. That says a lot. So I don't actually know the answer to your question pedagogically, where is this going? I would love to see this be implemented. Again, please take it to your classrooms, take it to your families, your experiences, and keep the conversation going. Because this is a way to just, lift the wool a little bit on what's really going on, and to let them surprise us, and let them show how giving children the platform and the validation, I think, is imperative. Yes, and allowing them to really express their inner thoughts and their richness of experience and wisdom and perspectives. I feel I have learned more from this experience than I ever could have taught them. More from the children. You know, who's the student in the room? That's me. So just being very open to letting the kids show what they can do.
Very good. Would you kindly read a few more poems
Sure.
to end this
Sure.
event?
Metaphors seek ways of less resistance, reveal great betrayals. Flounder in obscurity, our judge and jury crawl at our ankles. Bounce on a shadow, leverage graciousness, dive into unknowns. Lumbering through bland tunnels of misguidedness, we misplaced our keys. One life comes, one goes, exchanging life's mysteries in still, shared silence. This is the artwork for that, by a first grader.
Remarkable. Incredibly beautiful.
Did you see the heart?
Indeed. It's a very artistic piece.
This is just what they did, then and there. Years slide into gray, you still in that place, not here. Can you hear me now? Some of the entries have more than one image. Arcs of harmony meander through awareness, suspended instants. This artist is in the room.
Wow. Congratulations.
One more. Oh, where did it go? Okay. This is one that the author, the forward author, talks about actually. This is a first grader. Resplendent moonbeams, do you carry the wishes of all who have lived? It's hard to see, but there are 3 figures in there. Could it be the 3 stages of life, the 3 stages of mankind, humankind? What's the one? Thwarted perspectives, life spent counting hours. Choose barriers over doors, closing into none. Yet, follow too closely, skip boundaries, ford borders. Too seldom to let me go. Lay your sunbeams down, bathe me in clear mist, so I may just be.
So I may just be.
Sometimes the simplest things are the most powerful.
Thank you so much for sharing your words.
Thank
And,
you. Thank you. And I would like to thank the student in the room. I would like to offer
Please.
him a clapping, and the other
Please.
artists who are not all here, and also to you for helping me arrange the website.
so he is the hero behind your...
He's the website guy, yes?
Wow, you have told me. Great. And
Thank you all also for coming and being a part of this. This is our journey. So please do contact me and let me know if you do any of these types of events. I want to hear what goes on. I'm always going to be a part of this. So please let me know.
yes, with this we are coming to the end of our program for today. And thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts, your experience, and your words with us. And a huge thanks and appreciation to those who watch this event online and maybe watch it later.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful evening ahead. Hopefully we will have a few more days of sun in Trondheim that we can enjoy the summer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Skogenwar. Thank you.
You wanted to say something?